You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. About mid-July, I truly want to be saying something on this show. I think some listeners don't understand that I want to be able to say this. I want to be able to utter these words and mean them, and for them to be true and not false. I want it to be something when I say it, everybody goes, yeah. And the thing is, Ed, that I want to be able to say in mid-July is, the White Sox really figured out Miguel Vargas.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely to be able to say that.
Right. Like, I want to be able in mid-July to be like, you know what, I was wrong. I was wrong about Miguel Vargas, and they really figured him out. And whatever they worked with, this whole hitting guru thing is working out, and that's a success story, and that's going to be one of the success stories of the 2025 season, because you found a guy who's going to be an everyday part of your lineup, just as much as I believe that Edgar Carroll will be a success story by the end of the year. Chase Meidroth, who is back, is going to be a success story, and there may be a few other ones, and that's what you're looking for in this season. I truly want to say that about mid-July. I'm not even going to think about saying it, though, until then, because he's had a great last couple weeks. Great last week and a half, I think, is what you would put it at right now.
Yeah, last 15 days, he's hitting .333 with a .923 OPS, 5 walks to 7 strikeouts, 2 homers.
And it's backloaded. Like, if you go to like his 7-day thing, it's even, the numbers are even higher. So yeah, and he's playing well. He's hitting the ball. He's hitting out of the ballpark. He's getting extra base hits. His walks to strikeouts are pretty much around the same, so he's walking almost as many times as he's striking out. He's not doing a lot of it. I mean, in comparison, over that time period, Luis Robert Jr. struck out 20 times to 10 walks, where Vargas has struck out 7 times to 5. He's playing extremely well, and trust me, I want to be able to say in the middle of July, they were right, I was wrong. They figured something out. It's good to see that we have good coaching. We have methods being used, and they're developing players. They found a guy that the Dodgers couldn't fix, and they fixed him. That would be amazing. Like, that would be something that I couldn't believe. I still don't believe at this moment. That's why I'm saying it this way. That the White Sox would be capable of taking a player that an organization like the Dodgers gave up on and turn him into what he always should have been. That would be incredible. But the point is, it's the beginning of May. He's had a couple of good weeks, and he did the same thing in spring training. And just like I've talked about with Andrew Vaughn, who still hasn't had his moment yet, but at some point Andrew Vaughn is going to go off for a couple of weeks and hit .320. It's going to happen. He's going to hit .320 for a couple of weeks. And baseball is not about a couple of weeks. You don't evaluate players off of these sparks. That's been one of the problems that the White Sox organization has always had. That a guy has a good month, and they hang on to it for years. And so let's see what he does. Like, I will at least pull back on the take him out of the lineup thing. I will just focus on Andrew Vaughn. I'll pull back. I will, as of today, and I guarantee you there's a great possibility that a week from now, I'm putting him back on that list of people that shouldn't be in the lineup, because this could all end very quickly. I hope it doesn't. I'll take him off it, because some fans have been a little annoyed when I post things or say things on the show where I'm like, well, we got to get him off the team as well. They're like, well, look at this last 2 weeks. So fine. We got nothing else to watch. Let's see what you can do, Miguel Vargas. I hope it's real, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, take it to Memorial Day, okay? Take it to Memorial Day, and I will start. That's the absolute earliest I will start sitting here saying, hey, Miguel Vargas may have unlocked something. If he's not at this necessarily this torrid of a pace, but if he's hitting, in the upper 200s, okay, if he's hitting somewhere in the neighborhood of 275 over that stretch, and he continues to walk and strike out at a reasonable pace.
OPS is over 800. OPS over 800.
And the OPS is over 800 or around 800. I will say, well done to Fuller, well done to Getz, well done to the coaching staff for helping this guy put it together at the major league level, knowing that at the minor league level, this wasn't an issue for him. However, you're right. 2 weeks doesn't mean anything. And this is where, bringing back around to Andrew Vaughn, this is where the problem you and I in particular have had with Andrew Vaughn over the years is that Andrew Vaughn does get streaky. He will go on a tear at some point. Andrew Vaughn will hit very, very well for a few weeks, and then he disappears again. And then he'll hit very, very well for a couple more weeks, and then he disappears again. The problem is that he only does that about 2, maybe 3 times in a season, and we've seen that play out over and over and over again. There's a reason why fans are clamoring for Tim Elko to come up and get an opportunity, because we don't really care about Andrew Vaughn's next hot streak because it doesn't mean anything. It's never meant anything.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting. If you're on the social media, especially the X or Twitter, depending on what you like to call it these days, the White Sox put up a mental health post for National Mental Health Month. That's May 1st. Before I start talking about this, I do want to preface this as I was a 911 dispatcher for 10 years. I've actually talked people off of buildings and talked them into putting the gun away. So I'm aware of how serious mental health is. Okay, I've listened to it not work out well. So I get all that. In fact, I have a mental health expert on one of my other podcasts because we're recognizing the month here on the network. It just doesn't fit on Sox in the Basement because we like to just talk about the White Sox. So I'm very aware of it, and I know it's not a joking matter. But if you're the social media person for the White Sox in this current climate with this fan base,
Stop the comments on your post.
You had to know what was going to happen with that. I'm going to read their post, and then I'm just going to read the number one comment because I've checked it out about 4 times. The same comment string pops up at the top. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. No one is immune from any psychological, emotional issues, including athletes. For resources, visit whitesox.com/mental health. And the number one comment is a guy who writes, "You're the reason I have the suicide hotline on speed dial." Like, you had to know that was coming. And what was interesting is all the comments in this thing are followed with the White Sox social media person trying to shame them. This is the south side of Chicago. This is a place where when I moved away, and I was on the West Coast for a couple of years, lived in the Pittsburgh area, Wheeling, West Virginia for a couple of years before that, and I was moving back in late 2003. And I had been exposed to other people and how they react to sports, which is very different from this fan base. There are only a couple of fan bases that have the biting vitriol of White Sox fans and are not afraid to say something even if it might offend somebody, and whether or not you think it's right or wrong. And I'm driving in with the moving truck, and Jerry Manuel, I guess, a day or two earlier had fallen asleep in a dugout, which is a thing that a lot of White Sox managers do. And it's like a tradition.
Well, at least 2 of them, yeah.
Yeah, a tradition like no other. A White Sox manager fell asleep in the dugout who was
imprinted in history.
Who was doing poorly, and that the fans wanted to get rid of. And remember, they fire him after that season, and Guillen comes in, and they win the World Series in 2005. But the first caller that I heard on Sports Talk Radio comes on, and he immediately says, if Jerry Manuel was on fire, I wouldn't piss on him to put him out. And I just started laughing in the moving truck and said out loud, driving up the highway, coming home after years of doing morning radio around the country, I'm home. Like,
yep, that's a good sign. That's as good a sign as any.
I was like, this is one of the only places I'm going to hear that aired over the radio. It's going to be said, the radio hosts are going to laugh, and we're going to move on to somebody else who says something just as biting. So, of course, the White Sox account says this isn't a joke and blah, blah, blah. And that guy responds, allow me to be clear, if Andrew Vaughn continues to steal at-bats from Elko, I will do it. And then somebody tagged Tim Elko. Like, that's, social media is the craziest place in the entire world. Somebody wanted to make sure Tim Elko saw it.
Tim Elko has nothing to do with it. He cannot call himself up from Charlotte and take Andrew. This isn't, he's not a gladiator.
Somebody dragged Tim Elko into it.
Poor Tim Elko.
Like, social media is just, it's crazy. So, I mean,
you tag Andrew Vaughn in that if you're going to tag a player.
That's who you tag. You want to tag somebody, tag Andrew Vaughn in that one, okay? So, Tim Elko currently right now, over 26 games and 94 at-bats in AAA Charlotte. It's 34 hits. He's hitting .362. His on-base percentage is .440. Remember, they brought up Mydroth when he was sitting between .440 and .450 on his on-base percentage. They brought up Caro when he was sitting between .440 and .450 with his on-base percentage. Tim Elko is getting on base at a .440 clip. His slugging at .691. His OPS is .1131. He has 9 home runs over 26 games and 20 RBIs. He's walked 12 times to 31 strikeouts, which isn't bad. He's got 4 doubles. He's scored 18 times. Why is he not here? And it's got to come at some point. And that post out of the way, and whether or not you were like, well, that guy's just making a joke, or you're look, whatever. Like I said, I understand how serious it is, but I wanted to point it out. This is the number one thing that White Sox fans are upset about. If you scroll through that post, Andrew Vaughn is mentioned a lot. Tim Elko's mentioned. This is the number one thing. This is the number one thing in the comments on all of their posts. We're not the only ones talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. Why is Andrew Vaughn still standing at first base and hitting in the middle of your order? What are you waiting for? I mean, Luis Robert Jr. is starting to hit. That's really the story of the last couple of weeks. You want to talk about Vargas? I could be like, well, that might be fool's gold. You want to talk about Vaughn? I think we all know what he is, and we all think the organization is stupid right now at this point. They look ridiculous. They look foolish. If they stand in front of a microphone and try to justify it, they're just lying to themselves, lying to you, and inept. But the greatest thing to see over the last couple of weeks is watching Luis Robert Jr. finally start to come alive, Ed.
Yeah, that's an important thing. It is Luis Robert Jr. I mean, Andrew Vaughn, we can take or leave, and I know the defense of Andrew Vaughn from the White Sox is that if you look at his expected batting average, his expected slugging, his expected quality of contact difference, those underlying metrics suggest that in the major leagues, he's only behind Salvador Perez for, a massive difference from the luck he's hitting into. Okay, that's what they're saying. So he's hitting 162, but he should be hitting 235. Well, that's still not good enough.
No, it's not good.
His slugging percentage is 270. It should be 460. That makes a little bit more sense. And he does have the highest barrels per swing and everything on the team and all that stuff. But it's still, what you're looking at with Andrew Vaughn is you're still looking at a very limited player and not a guy that is either going to be a stalwart for the future or a guy that you're going to turn around and flip. And that's the big deal with Luis Robert Jr., right? Is that this is kind of the last year that you really have an opportunity to get something back from him.
You need a hot month.
Finish off this rebuild.
You need a hot month.
You need a hot month.
You need a hot month or two. You need him to warm up, and then you need to be able to move him. And that's what they're looking for. Sox in the Basement listeners and also viewers on YouTube to the video, for exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high-pressure sales. They're not in your kitchen. They're not tracking in mud in the spring season going into the summer. You go to their showroom, you see everything in full living color. No pictures in a book. There's an owner in showroom and one on site. They can answer all of your questions, and they make sure it's being done correctly. They use all of their own installers. They don't farm out the work. They've been doing it that way for over 40 years in Oak Forest since 1985. All major brands are custom made. No stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. I bring up fantasy baseball every once in a while to try to give some sort of comparison, a different way of looking at statistics. And it's interesting. I've thought about it a lot. Like one of the reasons why I don't trust the Vargas last couple of weeks is because he used to sit on my team. Like I was a Miguel Vargas fan. Like I grabbed him and kept him in my minor league system of my fantasy, my dynasty fantasy team for years. I watched him not pan out. When the Dodgers were trying him out for 80 games, he was on my roster. I believed in him. And I saw the streaky stuff. So that's why I think that's why I'm reacting differently. Like it depends on how you follow baseball. Like a guy like Miguel Vargas, I like to sit around and watch late night baseball games. The Dodgers are always on. I've watched a lot of Dodger games. Just sitting around trying to find something on television because I'm up and I'm not ready to go to sleep yet. I've had this guy on my roster on a team that I pay attention to, even if it's fantasy baseball. So I've watched his ups and downs. That's why I don't trust it that much. In the same regard, I have Luis Robert Jr. on the team. I have not been using him because of course, he's playing really badly, but it's interesting that he's scoring points. I noticed that. Like he's actually driving in runs. He's stealing bases. He's got a lot of things going for him for a guy who's hitting under 200. And so that's why I think that there's going to be a turnaround with him. I think he's about to break out. He just needs a little bit of positivity around him. We've talked about this. If everything's bad, Luis Robert Jr. is bad. That's why if a team picks him up, and whatever team gets him is going to get him at a value, they're going to pick him up and they're going to put him at some place in the lineup that he's not a focal point. They're going to surround him with really good talent, and you're going to watch him go nuts. You're going to watch him be a playoff star for one of these good teams because he's surrounded by good players who are doing their own thing, and there's no pressure on him, and his his mood, I think, would be up. I really think what's going on in the team around him, unfortunately, affects him way too much, Ed.
Well, and that can be the same could be said about Miguel Vargas, because again, with fantasy baseball, you watch, for example, what Gavin Lux is doing now that he's the Cincinnati Red, where he was dog meat as a Dodger and really struggled. And granted, he had an injury or two there, but they didn't know what to do with him. They didn't know where to play him. His defense was shoddy. His bat never came around, and now he's a guy that the Reds are counting on, and has played every day for them pretty much. And you watch and you look and you go, okay, well, what's the difference? I mean, he's surrounded by talent in LA. Miguel Vargas was surrounded by talent in LA, but you hit on the word positivity, okay? And pressure is a different animal for these guys too. Luis Robert Jr. being the focal point and the only offense on this team, he's never been able to rise to the occasion on that. It's hard for any player to do, but in this particular instance, he's been bad. Like you said, he's bad when everything else is bad around him. Now, when he's got Chase Mydroth in front of him getting on base, when he's got Edgar Caro behind him, who's been able to get on base and be productive, when he's got players around him, Andrew Benintendi's been decent this year. When he's got players around him that the pitchers have to pay attention to and they have to care about, Luis Robert Jr. has the freedom to just go there and try and do something productive at the plate. He doesn't have the pressure on him to be the only one who can hit the ball out of the ballpark. He doesn't have the pressure on him to sit there and say, we're not going to score a run here unless I do it myself. He can sit there and say, all I need is a base hit because my draw's on third. He got over there, all I need to do is take a walk here and steal a base to get myself in scoring position because Edgar's got a chance to drive me in. So you're right. When he goes to another team, regardless of what that team is, the pressure is going to be off of him because if they're already a playoff team, he's going to have guys that are there to take the pressure off of him. He's not going to have to be the star, the stud, the only offense every single day. If he goes to the Phillies, for example, Bryce Harper can carry that team. Kyle Schwarber can carry that team. You don't need Luis Robert Jr. to carry that team all the way around. Even Trey Turner can carry that team if he gets himself going. On the White Sox, you haven't had that largely over the past few years. And even when you had guys that were coming up with Luis Robert Jr., when Eloy Jimenez got hurt and became completely ineffective, it robbed Luis Robert Jr. of somebody else. As Andrew Vaughn has never developed, it robbed him. When you didn't have Jose Abreu anymore, it robbed him of some ability just to go up there and just try and do something productive at the plate. So, yeah, I'm not really worried about the fact that the White Sox are going to trade him and he's going to go off with whatever team he goes to, because this is not a situation like Eloy Jimenez where we kind of secretly thought maybe the injuries had caught up with him. Maybe that chest injury was he's never going to be right after that, and he might have been toast. I don't think Luis Robert Jr. is toast. I just think at this point, he is an expensive luxury item that a White Sox team that is battling the Rockies for being the worst team in baseball for the second year in a row doesn't have the ability to keep. And so what we want is, like you said, a good couple of months. But to get that done, Chris Getz has got to recognize that he's got to continue to replace guys in the lineup, and Will Venable's got to replace guys in the lineup that are unproductive because it doesn't help Luis Robert Jr. do anything.
Music means the Sox nerd. Dave Marin is on the line to give you some trivia nuggets and tidbits like he puts up on the scoreboard at the rate each and every White Sox home game, and he joins us here on Sox in the Basement each and every weekend to share some more with us, and he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore. See it all at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you have for me?
Chris? It's times like these where the old nerd looks deeply into the parts of the whole for gems because the whole isn't giving us a whole lot right now. So with that in mind, here are some Sox nuggets mined from recent games. Miguel Vargas has hit 1/3, that's 5 of 15, of his home runs against the Milwaukee Brewers. His blast on Thursday afternoon was the first 3-run homer of his career. Thursday was May 1st, which was the 65th anniversary of when a Sox homer, it was by Al Smith, launched the fireworks at Comiskey Park for the first time. Among others to set off the homer fireworks on the board's birthday are Aparicio, Allen, Herman, Calderon, Kittle, Carlos Lee, Ordonez, Creedy, Uribe, AJ Abreu, and Corey Lee. The recently disabled Gage Workman gave me some nice parts to work with, which proves I can probably dig up anything on any Sox player. At 6'4", Workman is tied for being the tallest player to appear at shortstop for the White Sox. The Sox' other 6'4" shortstops are Pat Keedy in 1987 and Jermaine Dye, yes, Jermaine Dye, who played 1/3 of an inning at the position on April 27, 2005 in Oakland. Workman is also the first player to wear number 41 and play third base for the White Sox. Luis Robert Jr. emerged from the first month of the season with 12 stolen bases, which is the second highest Sox total in March/April behind Kenny Lofton's 13 in 2002. By the way, the Sox record for steals in a month is 19, set by Eddie Collins in September of 1917 and tied by Rudy Law in July of 1983. Edgar Caro continues to impress and accomplish things rarely seen in Sox history. For instance, his .417 on-base percentage is the second highest output by a Sox catcher in his first 14 big league games with at least 40 at-bats. Atop this list is Omar Narvaez, currently toiling at AAA Charlotte, who had a .426 OBP in his first 14 games in 2016. Caro started in the cleanup spot 5 times in his first 14 games. Only 12 Sox players have done this, with the latest being Jose Abreu in 2014. Caro is the only catcher in Sox history to make 3 starts in the 4 spot by his 14th game. And one more. At age 22 years, 20 days, Caro became the youngest catcher in big league history to start in the 3-hole by his 10th game. He surpassed Thurman Munson, who was 22 years and 96 days old when he hit third for the Yankees on September 11th, 1969. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. My zinger? In honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. John Garland was at the park on Wednesday. He kind of gets lost in the shuffle when that 2005 team is discussed, but he led the champs with 18 wins and a league-best 3 shutouts. When Garland, who had been kind of an enigma to that point, went 4-0 in April, I think we all knew 2005 was going to be different, and it was. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you probably wanted to know about anniversary homers, tall shortstops, and cleanup catchers.
Another guy that's really interesting to me, and we haven't gotten into it yet, and I think a lot of White Sox fans might have missed it. Maybe you saw it. Colson Montgomery is going to Arizona. Like
He's not even in Charlotte anymore.
They're taking him out of the minor league system to work with him one-on-one because he can't hit. This is an absolute disaster. This is a disaster. He started off the year hitting 149. That's what he's done so far before they send him basically. They just take him out of the minor league system. Like, you know what? We don't know what to do with you. 149 with a 223 on base percentage and a 478 OBP. Like, it's frightening to see the drop off. If you really look at him and his stats, and I'm bringing them up right now as we're talking, but here's a guy who's rated 36 on the MLB Pipeline top 100 list, and he really shouldn't be up there. But if you take a look at him and his moves through the minor leagues, we're looking at a guy that when he was getting hyped, he was at A ball. He was at AA ball. He has never been able to put it together in AAA. He is a cannot get above AAA. He can't get above AA player. They tried him out now. You have to be honest with yourself now when you're assessing Colson Montgomery. You have to look at a guy who his first forays into AA, or his first real full season in it, was in 2023 at 21 years old. He hits 244 with an 828 OPS. The average dropped. When he was an A ball, he was a 300 plus hitter. He becomes a 240 hitter, and they move him up. because he goes to the Arizona Fall League, he hits 244, and he actually, that year, like, his OPS goes down. And they still insist on moving him to Charlotte. And when they move him to Charlotte because they're rushing to get him here, you see his average plummet another 30-some points. He goes from being a 244 hitter now to 214. So in single A, he's a guy who's hitting over 300. In double A, he's a guy who's hitting in the 240s. In triple A, he drops to being a guy who's hitting 214. His OPS goes from being around 900 to 1,000 to down in the low 800s to now down into the low 700s where it's average. He goes and he has a couple of good weeks in the Arizona Fall League before this spring training. He's terrible in spring training, gets himself hurt. Hits 149 now in his second foray in the AAA, and he's in Arizona again so they can take a step back and look at his offensive approach. This is, I mean, we talk about prospects that fizzle out. That's what I feel like this is. This is a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
This is an absolute disaster. This would be a miracle if you brought this kid back and he became even an everyday starter in Major League Baseball. He don't look like Corey Seager anymore. He looks like a guy that isn't even going to get here. And if he gets here, isn't going to last very long.
Oh, yeah, the second coming of Corey Seager. Now he looks more like Pete Seeger. You know, get him Paul and Mary and have him do folk songs because baseball may not be in his cards. You're right. I mean, in A-ball, 324 batting average, 901 OPS. In high A, at Kannapolis, he's 284 with an 895. That's still pretty respectable. 2 seasons in Birmingham, 51 games, 218 with a 741. He's played 153 games at the AAA level. He has hit a grand total of 204 with a 674 OPS. This is a guy that is definitely falling apart before our very eyes. And he's gone from a can't-miss prospect that you're going to build your team around to now a guy that I honestly, I don't see how you justify bringing him to the major leagues until he's had at least one season in Charlotte where he shows me that he can hit, you know, back to at least that 284, 895 level.
Doesn't he look like another rushed prospect? Like it's not as rushed as Andrew Vaughn, but I mean, seriously, when he's in A-ball, he gets 1 season, he gets 2 seasons in rookie ball, and he gets a season in A-ball. A season in A-ball, like you said, hitting 324 with a 901 OPS.
And keep in mind, a season in A-ball is 45 games.
Right, exactly. Then he only plays 54 games in the next higher level of A-ball. He plays 54 games, he hits 284 with an 895 OPS. There's a slight downturn, but okay, still a solid ball player. And his 51 games only in Double A. He only had 217 plate appearances in Double A. And he hit 218 over those. And you were like, he's ready for Triple A. Get ready, Chicago, he's coming. What? Like, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What did he do? He had a really hot week, so we figure he's good. Like, that's not how baseball works.
No.
It's not how baseball works.
And I know Birmingham has like power suppressing characteristics at that ballpark, and that league is a little bit tougher to hit.
Yeah, but it's a bandbox in Charlotte, and he hit 204 over 153 games and 675 plate appearances. In AAA,
exactly.
He's had 675 plate appearances to the tune of 204. The future.
Yeah, he's played basically a major league season. And 21 home runs, 69 RBIs, 10 steals. I mean, there's some numbers here, 22 doubles, but a 204 average, 674, and a 204 on base percentage. That's not starter numbers. If he comes up right now, he's Jacob Amaya.
And here's the thing, that's
what he's going to hit like.
When you see that, sometimes you can make the argument when a guy's in AAA. You can sit there and say, well, he had to adjust. He had a really rough time the first half of those at bats, and then he got better at the back end. So who cares what his overall was at that level? Okay, but over his last 103 plate appearances, he's hitting 149. So he's not getting better, he's getting worse. So those are real numbers. And they had the audacity to tell us that he may be a starter to kick off the season with us. This is the truth, this is the future. This is one of the problems with this organization. It is. It's really one of the problems. Colson Montgomery shines a big giant spotlight on one of the problems with this organization, an inability to evaluate talent. They have a very hard time evaluating talent that they're trading for, and they seem to have a very hard time evaluating the talent in their system because they're hyping up this Colson Montgomery who's doing nothing except show up on prospect list that, and I'm sorry, folks, doesn't mean as much as people say it means. Some of the best players in baseball over history may not have been hyped or drafted really high, but became really good ball players. So where you're at, you may have a higher probability of working out, but you're not a guarantee to work out because you show up on a couple of lists. And meanwhile, Tim Elko sitting down there, hitting the crap out of the ball, and you'd rather stick with Andrew Vaughn. The talent evaluation is the number one problem on this team. And we see these little changes. We see some changes in the front office. We see Chris Getz bringing guys from the outside. And like I said, in July, I want to be able to sit there and say, this is really good. You got Ryan Fuller, and you got a hitting guru, and he fixed Miguel Vargas, and this is the greatest thing ever. And we can all be super excited about it. And I'll sit here and say, I was wrong. I should have had faith in the new system that they had, right? But I have decades of track record with this organization where there's always seems to be a misevaluation of your own talent and a lot of misevaluations of talent that you're bringing in. And Colson Montgomery is a misevaluation of talent, or it's a development process.
Or failure of development because
right. And your general manager was in charge of that. Remember that? He was in charge of development. Like Colson Montgomery is in the system developing while Chris Getz is in charge of it. And then he's sitting there boasting that this guy's coming to the majors. Like, I can't open up Baseball Reference to see how bad he is.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.